All right. Well, we're at 2 after. We're gonna go ahead and get started here with today's part 2 of Chaos Management and Resiliency series with Darian Fleming. We're always excited to have Darian with us. So we get our second shot of her, and then we'll get our triple shot come next month. I think in 3 weeks' time. We're gonna go a little bit before the holidays so that we can get it all in before Thanksgiving. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Veronica Sutton. I am the Vice President for Education, Puget Sound Association of Legal Administrators. And before we jump into our program, I'd like to introduce Pam Morton, who is with us. Someone who's not quite muted. Let me just see here. Okay, sorry about that. It was getting a little noisy. I'd like to introduce Pam Morton. Pam is with us from National Institute for Trial Advocacy, which is one of our business partners for the chapter. She is client relationship manager with them, and so she's going to introduce herself, tell us a bit more about the National Institute for Trial Advocacy, what they do and what they can do for us. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Pam. Welcome, Pam. Glad to have you with us.
Well, thanks, Veronica. It's nice to be here, and I wish I get to visit people in person like I used to, but no, we'll do it this way. NITA, which we, for short, has for about 50 years, we've been doing attorney training for litigation skills. So trial skills, depo skills, communication skills, all kinds of things, anything pertaining to litigation, immigration law, variety of different things. And we are lucky because we had been running our deposition skills program in an online format for about 10 years. So we were easily able to morph all of our other programs over to online. So they're all learning by doing, but we use the Zoom room. So you still get as much performance time as before. So we believe that you should make your mistakes with us and not in your courtroom. So, and we also have some free resources, which I will just mention, because if your folks are doing remote advocacy or remote depots, we have some free webinars on that topic and on a variety of other topics if that is of interest. So Darian is a certified career coach and trainer. She started her career as an attorney at AmLaw 100 firms in Boston. And after 7 years, she transitioned over to professional development. She has directed evaluation processes for legal professionals, run compensation processes, advised management on best practices, and coached attorneys at every level of the firm on business development, leadership management, career advancement, and succession planning. And she spent over 12 years feeding her passion, which is training attorneys and legal staff in critical interpersonal skills. So some of those include communication, delegation, feedback, interviewing, networking, mentoring, imposter syndrome, and resilience, which those are all more important than ever, right? So, and she is a double eagle, which I had to look that up. She graduated from BC, both undergrad and law school. And she's a certified professional coach through ICF and CTI. And she's certified to lead Gallup strength sessions, DISC sessions, and smart collaboration workshops.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, folks, we're ready to dig into part 2. So I'm going to share my screen and let's just remind ourselves of where we've been and where we're going. So our framework, let's look at it, remind ourselves about our resiliency framework. Last time we spent all of our time on the self-awareness piece, right? That sort of outside the actual framework piece, but we can't dig into the framework without really understanding ourselves better. So we talked about strengths and we talked about saboteurs, and really understanding our saboteurs and how they impact how we lead is really important work. So in that work, we also did some positive intelligence exercises, if you may recall. That was to get those new neuro pathways to really combat that negative inner voice. I want to check in to see how your homework went. I gave you all numbers of pieces of assignments. The first one was to use your strengths intentionally in your work. So I'm curious, did anybody on our call use their strengths intentionally in their work that wants to share sort of, yeah, I thought about this and this is what I did. Who wants to be my person? Oh, come on. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go out to the screen. Nobody used their strengths? Really? This is depressing. Okay, folks, remember, the whole point of our strengths is so that when we are challenged, we lean into them because we know that that's when we're at our best. Okay, so no examples today, that's okay. Did anybody do the other homework, which was to try a mood lifter or to try one of our actual new neuro pathways, that gratitude journal, the doubler, the conscious act of kindness? Did anyone do that? Veronica?
So I'm going to throw you a bone here.
Thank you. Oh my goodness.
I don't want to dominate. I want to give other people an opportunity. But so I think on our last session, I had mentioned to you that I had actually found a printed out sort of summary of my strengths from having done a Strengths Finder exercise several years back, one which you facilitated, funny enough. And so I found that and I actually pulled it out and I put it on my desk. And one of the areas that was revealed as a strength, and I kind of knew this, was just empathy. And so I've really tried to, incorporate more of that practice in my daily work, obviously working with everyone that I, come into contact right now, be that staff or attorneys. So I've really tried to, I guess, even though it is a strength, it does require some exercise. And so to exercise empathy in working with, my colleagues and certainly, in my family circle, because we're all going through a lot right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And the truth is, all of our strengths need to be intentional, right? It's how we move from sort of our rawness and how we show up to our true strength is when we use our strengths intentionally. So thank you for that example. It's brilliant. And empathy is one of those talents that we need most right now in this environment. So thank you for that. Joanna, it looked like you were going to jump in and maybe you used one of the mood lifters or neuro pathways?
Yeah, I started keeping a gratitude journal. It's something that I've thought about for years and have never done. It tied in really well at work. We're having an October wellness challenge where we have to do something daily. And I thought, I'll tie these together, I'll do it. And I will say that the act of writing down something, like sometimes it's a struggle. At the end of the day, I go, okay, what am I grateful for? And I feel like I'm just pulling something random. The best thing about it so far is looking back. It's thumbing through what I've written this month and seeing everything down there. I think that's the biggest mood lifter. It's much bigger than that day where I'm writing something down.
Yeah, thank you for that learning, Joanne, because that's absolutely right. We have that moment in the moment of writing. And like you said, sometimes that's hard. It's like, this was a really bad day. what do I have here,
Yeah.
But when we look back, it's like, oh, wow, that's right. That was something I was grateful for, this small thing today. And sometimes when you're struggling, Joanne, to find something in the day, just reviewing what you've already written can be have the same impact and keep that neuro pathway being hammered out, which is what we're trying to do, right? 30 days of that habit so that it becomes really ingrained in who we be. Excellent. Thank you for that. Anybody else? One more volunteer. Did anybody else try any of these exercises? Yeah, Suzanne.
Hi there.
Susan.
So one of the things that I did was, I know that I do sort of a few times a week, send out messages to the entire office for like uplifting things. We call it my daily dose of optimism. And so I do that regularly. But what I did try to do from that time that we talked till now is I'm finding at least one staff member that I know and talk to tell them something positive and encouraging, like directly, either by phone or by email, not just like a kudos, but like just going out of my way to check in and then including something positive. And that really actually, it's selfish because it makes me feel better too.
So that's the beauty, Susan, is that these sorts of exercises, particularly the conscious act of kindness, has that doubling effect. You
Yep.
impact somebody else and you feel good too.
Yeah.
So it's why we do it. So thank you for sharing that. That's really great. And that conscious act of kindness, I would ask everyone to try one of these things. Remember, we're trying to grow that positive intelligence mindset. That's what part of resilience is. So let's jump into where we're going. So we just talked about what we're going to do. Today, we're actually going to jump into the framework, okay? And the first piece we're going to tackle is management of one's self. Okay, this is starting from within. We have to start within in order to have meaningful impact on what we put out. Okay, so in this category, it's that self-regulation, growth mindset, self-care, self-confidence, self-compassion, grit. All of those things fall in management of oneself. So we're going to start with self-regulation. So when we think about self-regulation, it really involves controlling our own behavior, controlling our own emotions, controlling our own thoughts, right? Emotional self-regulation, which is really what's valuable in resiliency building, is our ability to manage our disruptive emotions and impulses, right? When we're angry, we don't want to just yell at somebody, right? Self-regulation is when I'm angry, I can take a deep breath and not react on my impulse. So how do we do that? It's a lot easier said than done, right? Because when we are stressed, we're in constant reactive mode. We're short-sighted, we're singularly focused, we're clenched over, we're hunched over, right? Our heart rate is racing, our breath is short and shallow, and we want to be able to shift out of that so that we're not in reactive mode. The best tool in our toolbox for self-regulation is our breath. And being able to control our breath can control our own emotions. It can control our impulses. It can even control our energy. Okay. So I am not an expert in pranayama, which is the breath regulation. There are many humans who study this and teach this for their life's work. I have gone shallow on this work because of my coaching work with my clients who need help in managing stressful situations. And if you want to go deep, I'm going to recommend a book called Breath by Belisa. It's Belisa Vranich, Vranich. And it's breathe. It's not breath. It's breathe. Excuse me. Breathe is the name of her book. And she gives you all sorts of breathing techniques. Depending on what you want to have happen to your body, she will give you the breathing technique to do that. This is how powerful the breath is. Okay. Today, I'm going to teach you one technique for reducing your blood pressure, reducing your heart rate. That's what happens when we're stressed. It's called alternate nostril breathing. Okay. And it's very simple. We breathe in by plugging one nostril, and we breathe out by closing the alternate nostril. We breathe in, do it with me, out, in, out, in, out. This process is proven to lower our blood pressure. It also ignites our parasympathetic nervous system so that our blood pressure and our heart rate decrease. And that's what we want when we're in fight, mode, right? We need to decrease. I recognize that if you are in the office, you are probably not going to sit by your desk and put your finger on the side of your nose and keep doing this. I suggest if you are in the office, you head to the restroom and you do this technique. Do it for 2 minutes. That's all it takes is 2 minutes to get back to center. Some of you may not care and you may just need this technique and you just do it right there. Just do it right there. Just do it right there. I am in full support of that. There's another technique that's a little bit easier. It's not about breath, but it's a little bit easier to do at your desk when you might not actually have somebody, noticing that you're doing this technique. It's called body scanning. It's a meditation technique, except it's less difficult than sort of like not thinking. Okay. I think that when people talk about meditation, often people are like, I can't do that. My brain goes wild. Yeah, your brain goes wild. They call it monkey mind, and it's a real thing. Body scanning is really a measured approach to meditation where you guide your own thoughts into actually scanning what's happening in your body. Remember, our whole brain is going 100 miles per hour down a highway, and we're stressed and we're just driving on that highway. We need to put on the brakes so that we don't behave badly. And body scanning is the brake, okay? So here's what we're gonna do. We're all just gonna try it together. I'm gonna lead you through this, but generally when you're doing this on your own, you're gonna lead yourself through it. There are also a bazillion apps. You can find one and it can lead you through a body scan, but today I'll lead you through a body scan. You do not need to close your eyes for this exercise. This is why it can be useful at your own desk, but you also can close your eyes if you'd like to. Right? It helps you center if you do close your eyes. But again, you don't have to. So we want you to sit up straight and we want you to take a deep breath in and then release that breath, finding yourself sort of relaxing into your body. And start at your feet. What are you noticing about your feet on the floor? What sensations do you feel? Are they heavy? Is there vibration? Are they sweaty feet? Are they cold feet? What's happening there? Slowly scan up your body to your legs. Feel them pressing against your chair. Are they shaking? Are they steady? Is there a lightness there, a heaviness there? What's happening with your legs? Notice your back on your chair. Are you sitting all the way back? Do you have stress in your shoulders holding up your back? If so, release the stress. What's happening in your tummy? Is it tight? Is it tense? Breathe into it and let it relax. Moving up to your hands, through your arms. What's happening with your hands and your arms? Are they tingling? Are they soft and relaxed by your side? If not, let them be soft and relaxed by your side. Moving up to those shoulders again, making sure that they're not at your ears. Moving up to your face. Is your jaw tight or is it loose? If it's tight, loosen it. All the way to the tippy top of your head. Taking a deep breath in, noticing what you needed to notice about your body. So notice, friends, how we slow down that 100 mile per hour stress vehicle. This is a tool in your toolbox, body scanning. And I just spent 2 minutes on that exercise. Okay, that's how long it takes. Not very long to get centered, to get focused. Self-regulation is a critical part of how we show up when we're in chaos. So you get to decide if you want to choose breath regulation, if you want to choose body scanning. You might have another tool in your toolbox, but self-regulation is critical. Let's move to growth mindset. We've heard this term, right? Growth mindset is kind of a new buzzword. Fixed mindset is I'm fully cooked. I am who I am. I am not going to change. The situation's not going to change. The world isn't going to change. Everything is the way it is. There's no learning opportunity whatsoever. That's fixed mindset. Growth mindset is the opposite. I'm a person who's constantly in development. I'm able to learn. I'm able to grow. The world will change. Things will change and develop and grow. And what we learned last time is that the study of neuroscience tells us that we can, as humans, grow and develop, right? And growth mindset is actually believing that and living that and having it all come to life. So growth mindset is critical when we are dealing with stressful situations. So how do we shift from that pessimism, that fixed mindset, to optimism? That's the question. There's this psychologist called Marty Seligman. He's done a lot of work on optimism, and he says he's a pessimist, and he has taught himself how to be an optimist. And here's one of the tools. He calls it the PPP to the CCC. So what is the PPP? The PPP is prevalent, permanent, personal. Okay. This is prevalent, permanent, and personal. It's like this everywhere. Prevalent. It's never going to change. Permanent. This always happens to me, right? We've all heard ourselves have that perspective. We've heard others have that perspective, that pessimistic perspective. So how do we shift? He says we need to go to the CCCs. And the CCCs are, what's the challenge here in this situation? What can you rise to tackle? What choices do you have in this situation? And what are you committed to? What are your values? What matters to you? So it's challenge, choice, commitment. So I'm going to tell you a personal story about my PPP moment, my true pessimistic moment, and how I shifted to CCC. So like you, I've been doing some self-awareness raising work. And I know my talents and my strengths. I also know my lesser talents. And I am not great with attention to detail, and I'm not great with the financing piece of my business. It's just not my strength. I'm a people person, and I don't care about that nitty gritty. So back in March, I'm a small business owner. I applied for the PPP loan. Turns out I'm using a PPP example for a PPP tool here. That's just by happenstance. But so I applied for my PPP loan. Fast forward a couple weeks ago, I'm working with the Small Business Administration, and I'm working on my loan forgiveness. And the woman on the other end of the phone says, oh, well, you applied for the Economic Disaster Relief Loan, not the PPP. Your loan is not forgivable. Imagine my pessimism. I, through my tears, said to my husband, this is what's wrong with bureaucracy. This is why nobody likes the government, because everything is so hard and it's always like this and it's never going to change. I consider myself pretty smart and I got it wrong, right? And this always happens to me when I try to do finance stuff. I'm no good at this. Pessimist. And I sat in that. I want to be clear. I sat in that for many days, okay? And my husband said to me, not knowing PPP to the CCC, okay? He just did this intuitively. He said, honey, you didn't need that money. You thought you did. You were worried at the beginning of the pandemic, like every small business owner was, and your business is okay. It's survived. So you didn't actually need that money. And so paying it back is probably the right thing. It actually fits your values. Now there's money for small business owners who actually need it. He leaned into commitment, my value system, right? And boy, in that moment, did I turn off my sad sacchary pessimism and step right into, that's right. I am now in a position to help others, right? And what a huge shift. He didn't know this formula, but he asked me the committed question, or he made a statement about my commitments, my values, what matters to me. He could have asked, what's the challenge in this situation? He could have said, what choices do you have? The other C's. But he moved me from pessimism to optimism. So that's what we want you to practice. You can do this on yourself. You can do this for others, but this is a tool for stepping into growth mindset. And you know, I'm all about filling your toolbox. That's what all these trainings are about. So let's go to our next topic, self-care. Self-care is in our category of managing oneself. And there is tons of research on how important self-care is, particularly in the context of resiliency. We are able to manage whatever comes at us if we have a good self-care regime. The challenge is most of us do not build in time for these self-care activities. And so why is it? Why is it when we actually all know that this is important, that we don't make time or energy for it, right? Part of it is certainly that we are busy humans, okay? We are busy. And there's this other element. I had this client say to me just 2 days ago, I think it is selfish for me to take 30 minutes once a week for myself when I transition between work and being a mom. I think that's selfish, that half hour a week. Wow, right? And there are lots and lots of people who believe that self-care is self-indulgent. And the research shows us just the opposite. In fact, we haven't all flown very much recently, but remember when we fly, they always tell us to put on our oxygen mask first, right? We need to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others. And this is true in our real lives, not just when we're flying. And so I actually want to take 10 minutes of our time today for you to actually think about your own self-care, because this is how important it is to your resiliency building. So we're going to do some breakout rooms, and I want you to think about what your self-care regime is. If you do not have one, if you are one of those people who haven't made the time, reflect on the impact of that on your resilience. And I want you to think about one thing you could do going forward to take care of yourself. So with that, Veronica, can we do breakout rooms, just a pair share, so that people can start discussing their own self-care regimes, and then we'll come back and have a few folks share with us if we could.
All right.
Okay, awesome.
2 per room.
Yeah, 2 per room. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do breakout for 8 minutes, and I'll give you the 2-minute warning. All right. Oh, wonderful to see everyone's faces. So who would like to share? Let's get a couple of volunteers to share what their self-care regime is. Who wants to tell me what their self-care regime is? Anybody?
I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, please.
I have a long commute. I live over on the peninsula, and that's my me time. And I love to read, so that's my reading time. Listening to fun podcasts. I've discovered a podcast that is just purely entertainment called Trashy Divorces. And I love it dearly and can't wait for Monday morning to get my new episode of Trashy Divorces. But yeah, it's a forced me time, and it really is beneficial.
Yeah, so I want to just acknowledge a couple of things that Michelle said. One is she looks forward to it. So self-care tasks are all things that we look forward to. But the other thing that she said that she may not be recognizing that she's doing is she's actually finding some positive in what someone might find negative, right? She has a long commute. And so what she's done is she's taken what could be pretty yucky and made it something really positive that she looks forward to by adding some of that, taking that time and reframing it as self-care time. So really brilliant. It's just a great example of resilience, sort of kind of what we're talking about. So thank you for sharing, Michelle. Anybody else want to share his or her self-care regime? Anybody?
Well, I'll share. Am I on? Yeah.
Yeah, Sue, you're on.
A couple of things. So I live by myself. So right at the beginning of COVID, I kind of identified two different couples that I do a lot with, and we started, and Sue, who I met, now calls that kind of group like the germ circle, which I love. I used to just call it the pod, but now I'm going to change it to the germ circle. We meet for dinner like once a week, and we've been together since the beginning. So neither one of us sees a lot of other people. So it's pretty good. I set aside at lunchtime. I used to walk. I try to walk, but if I don't, I read my Kindle. So I've read fabulous books during this whole thing, and cooking new recipes pretty much, and building a website for my import business. So I've kept pretty busy.
That's great. That's great. So pleasure reading is really important. A lot of us read for our work. I always make sure I have two books going, a workbook and a pleasure book. And I never go through a week without having picked up my pleasure book, because I know that it's not good for my soul. So really important, if you're not a reader, that's not your thing, that's fine. But if you are a reader, make sure that you're doing something that is just for you. That's what self-care is all about. Do I have one more volunteer want to share? Cooking is a great one, particularly if it's not a chore for you, but something that you actually enjoy. Yeah, Susan.
Share. So in order to get out of the house, because it seems like when I used to have my Fitbit on, that it was getting really sad to the point I took it off, because it's just sitting in your desk working, taking care of the kids, walking around the house, and I started a couple of months ago, getting up in the morning before everything happens. So like an extra half an hour early. So like 5:30 in the morning, and going for a walk at least 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. And, earbuds on and music. And I can absolutely tell when I don't do it, because it changes that whole day. So I get up in the morning. I did it this morning. The reason it's in my mind is I did it this morning. It was 39 degrees out. I woke up and I threw all my clothes on before I could change my mind, because it was chilly. And it was awesome. Like, you get out there in the brisk air and, music on, and it was wonderful. So I should really hate having to get up early that I already do. And it's actually, I will remember today on the days that I don't want to get up, because it was really like changed my mindset for the whole day.
So thank you for sharing that. So there are two really important takeaways. One is Susan created time by waking up earlier. So when we say we don't have time, right? Susan created it because she knew how important it was. Secondly, one of the positive mindset techniques for hammering out that new neural pathway is exercise. We think of exercise a lot of times as, I got to lose weight, I got to be heart healthy. Exercise is about being mind healthy, okay? And there's a real benefit to our own positivity when we exercise. And in fact, you don't need as much exercise to get the brain positivity as you do the heart health and, the losing weight factor, all of that. That's, you need more exercise for that. Research is about 10 to 15 minutes of exercise gets us that positive reaction. So great, Susan. And obviously you're feeling it today, and she demonstrated her positivity. So great. Thank you all for sharing. If you are one of the people who are kind of like, I don't really know what this is about, and I'm not about self-care, I'm going to encourage you, reach out to me. I will help you identify some self-care. I will dig out of you what you enjoy, because this is, quite frankly, it's essential. And it's why we're spending so much time on it. Okay. ready to move on to our next piece. The next piece is management over response to events. So we started and focused on who we be, right? That's what we just spent time on, who we be. Now we need to talk about what we do, how we show up. And so we're going to talk about what we do. That's management over response to events. That includes flexibility, problem solving, perspective shifting, time management, organization, all the things you folks identified last time as people who have skills in chaos management bring these things, right? They bring these external things. So we're gonna talk about that for the rest of our program today. So let's talk about flexibility. And we're not talking about being flexible. We're talking about flexibility in our mind, right? Yes, it's having, there's a fine balance between being organized and being so rigid that we're set to a schedule, right? We're going to talk more about that next time we meet. Today, we're going to talk about flexibility in our mind, our perspective shifting. So there's this beautiful story. We're going to go back in time when we communicated by telegram. Okay, we communicated by telegram, and there are these two salespeople. These two salespeople go into remote regions in Africa, and they both report back. They're shoe salesmen. And the number one person says, yikes, situation hopeless, stop. No one wears shoes. Okay, sounds pretty dire, not going to be good, except the other business development fellow says, hey, glorious business opportunity. Stop. They have no shoes. So how do we become the people who can see possibility, right? How do we become like Michelle, who can turn a long commute into a self-care regime? How do we make that transition? How do we see that? It's called reframing. You probably all have this tool in your toolbox and you probably all used it, but you may not know what you're actually doing, right? A lot of us do this work intuitively. I'm going to tell you what the process is that you've actually done. But before we do that, I want to remember some of our learning from last time. Remember that our brains are hardwired to scan for the negative, right? We learned that. We learned that 80% of our thoughts are negative. So we also learned that of those thoughts, 95% of them are the same as the day they were the day before. So we know that we have this automatic thinking that happens in our brains. We go to where we thought before, this is how I react, this is what I do, right? Our automatic thinking. And so we've got to shift our automatic thinking. So here's what we're going to do to reframe. We have an event and we have the automatic thinking. So let me give you the event. We'll just work through an exercise. The event is you've been working on a report for the last couple of days. Yesterday you gave it to your manager, your boss to review before you gave it to the larger team. And you got in this morning, you were checking your email and you see that your boss found an error in your report. Okay, so that's the event. You've worked really hard in this report. Your boss found the error. And what's your automatic thinking? Ugh, I worked so hard on this. God, I'm so stupid. Why didn't I take more time to do this, right? This is such a stupid failure that didn't need to happen. And we just start beating ourselves up. Sound familiar? Probably. So we need to stop. Breathe, right? We've got our alternate nostril breathing technique to calm us down. And then we need to reflect on the situation. We first need to take a step back. Your boss pointed out an error. But does that really make you stupid? Does the error take away all the time and effort that you put into the entirety of the report? There was one error. What did you get right? Right? We have to start looking for all the pieces of evidence. And then I want you to switch your glasses. I want you to put on your most positive lenses you possibly can and say, how can I view this situation in the most positive light, right? Okay, maybe I should have proofread. Maybe I should have taken a little bit of time to review my report before I sent it to my boss, but my boss caught the error. My boss caught the error before it went out to my entire team. And now I'm in a position to fix it and make it perfect for when I send it out. And isn't that the point of having your boss review your work? To catch the errors? That's the whole point. So here I am stepping into the process that I'm supposed to step into. My boss caught the error, I fixed it, right? Positivity lens. And then how do I respond? We don't want to respond with, ugh, what a horrible mistake. I'm sure you don't trust me anymore, right? All of the, the drama. We simply respond, thanks for catching the error. I've made the change. And we've totally taken ourselves out of the drama of the situation by reframing the event, right? As a positive event. So I imagine you help your attorneys and your staff reframe all the time. And this is what you're doing. By the way, when you do it, it's always easier to help somebody else put on the positivity lens than it is ourselves. If you have to engage in reframing by yourself, sometimes it can help to picture the most positive person you know. And what would they say in this situation? How would they see this situation? Because sometimes we don't have the ability to see it ourselves. So that's what we want you to do when you're thinking about needing to be our Michelle or that salesperson who saw all that possibility. Reframing. The last tool we're going to talk about is with respect to problem solving. So we're going to talk about Stephen Covey's circle of concern and influence. This is a problem solving tool. It's also a worry reduction tool. It's also a confidence and empowerment building tool. It's also a team management tool. And my guess is you have seen this tool throughout your careers, and we're just going to load it in the resiliency box because it is a resiliency building tool and problem solving tool. So circle of concern and influence. We start with the circle of concern, right? When we're stressed, we're carrying a burden, right? All of the things we're worried about, we're anxious, we're overwhelmed. And sometimes it can help just to speak what we're worried about. So it's not just what's happening in my work, it's what's happening in my life, it's what's happening in the world, right? All of this I carry. So just using the chat feature, you know I love to use the chat feature. Let's see, what are you worried about right now? What's in your circle of concern? It can be personal, it can be about the world, it can be about your life, whatever it is. What are you worried about right now? Nobody has any worries? I'm shocked by this. So here's what I would expect to see in the chat, which I'm not seeing anybody chat. I would, the holidays without family. Absolutely. I'm worried about that. Some people might put in here, I'm worried about year end at the firm and how much work I have to do. I'm worried about the forest fires in my backyard. Yeah, I'm worried about climate change, right? I'm worried about the election. I'm worried about the pandemic. I'm worried about, I'm moving out of my apartment. I'm worried about my move, right? So we have all of these worries. And, Pam and Veronica gave us examples of things that really are not within our control. And that's what happens when we put all of our concerns in the circle of concern. We begin to see, I don't really have any control over the forest fires in my backyard, right? So Stephen Covey says, well, what we need to focus on is what do you have an impact on, right? He calls this the circle of influence, things that you can effectuate change in. So I cannot change the outcome of the election. I cannot change climate change. Pam cannot change the fires in her backyard, right? But the question is, what can we do? What step, action can we take, if any? Okay, so that's our circle of influence. What Pam can do is she can prepare as the fires might move closer to help her with her own life. She can't stop the fire, right? But she can take some steps to prepare herself if the fire gets too close. With respect to elections, I cannot determine the outcome, but I can vote. I can volunteer for the election protection and help callers who have voting concerns, right? With respect to climate change, I can do my recycling effort. The idea here is, what direct action can I take that might have an indirect result on the larger scale? Okay, so it's kind of easy to understand, what I have direct control over, but we also have that indirect control. So if I don't like what I'm eating and I'm feeling sick, I have direct control over what I'm putting in my mouth. Okay, that's easy to identify. It's a lot harder to identify, how do I help myself with holidays without my family? There's nothing I can actually do there. There's a global pandemic. But maybe I could design how to be with my family virtually and something fun I can do with my family. That's it within my circle of influence, right? What Stephen Covey says is, we do not want to spend all of our time on the outside circle of concern. We want to spend time on the circle of influence, and we want to be proactive in doing that. Because when we do that, guess what happens? Our circle of influence expands, because we're putting all this positive energy, all these positive outcomes, and we see, oh, I could do that too, and I could do that too, and I could do that too. And all of a sudden we became more and more and more empowered, and our influence circle grows. The converse happens when we focus on the circles of concern. All of a sudden, we're not having any positive influence. None of our actions are having any positive influence. And we start reacting, and it depletes our energy, and we have no control over what's happening, and we feel stressed, and we feel hopeless because we can't change anything. And all of our possibility begins to contract. So when you have the worry, and I know all of you have worry, I know all of you have stress and concern. The question is, what bucket does it fall in? If it falls only in the circle of concern and you have no impact, you cannot stop forest fire. We need to put our brain to use in the stuff we can control, okay? So it's thinking about, what action can I take that might have an indirect impact on what I'm trying to effectuate. This is how we use this for problem solving. We don't want you to engage in problems that cannot be solved. Okay, we want you to be engaging in problems that can be solved. And you do that by doing this analysis. So we covered a lot today, a lot. I always just jam it in. And so next time we're going to continue on this management over our response to events, and we're going to spend time on that organization and time management. It's a really important piece of this for resiliency. And then we're also going to spend time on our management of our interactions, right? Chaos doesn't happen in a vacuum. We are constantly interacting with other people, and how we begin to engage with one another in this environment is important. So those are the two things we will cover next time. So we're just filling that box. Bring your toolbox back, and we'll continue to fill it more next go round. And I will stay on to answer any questions that you have. Any questions? Any thoughts? All right.
I will say, just while maybe as folks think about questions they might have, I've just looked at my calendar, and the part 3 of our series will be held on November the 12th, same time, same channel. So we hope to see all of you there.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.
Darian,
Thank you,
is your
Darian. This
is number
great.
1 available?